I'm delighted this Sunday afternoon to make a special announcement about a dream that's finally come true for me. It began with a dream. It took place in the early 1990s. I was working on my doctoral degree. My project and thesis just happened to be on spiritual direction as a model of pastoral ministry. And as a part of that project, we, of course, had to read all the contemporary and ancient literature, historical literature about the subject of spiritual formation, spiritual direction. And it was in that reading of the literature of the topic that I ran across an incredible woman of God by the name of Julian of Norwich. Julian lived in the 14th century. The date of her birth is somewhat varied. Some suggest 1343, others suggest 1342. But the significant thing about her birth at this time in the world was 5 years after her birth, the Black Death, a true global pandemic, swept through the world and particularly through Europe. And at the end of a 4-year period, from 1347 to 1351, 25 million people died of the Black Death, the Great Plague, it was called. That was over half the population of Europe. And it was in these years of horrible death, horrible pandemic, that Julian of Norwich made her impact on the world with the wisdom and the love of God that has been unparalleled since her life. So I'm reading all the literature about Julian of Norwich, reading her revelations of divine love, which incidentally was the first recorded English writing by a woman in the language. And so really she was a woman very much ahead of her times in so many respects. But to read the first document of spiritual formation and meditation and reflection in the English language by this woman was a remarkable experience for me. One night, as I'm engaged in my studies and in my work with my doctorate, I had a dream. This is in the early 1990s. And in this dream, Julian of Norwich came to me and simply said to me, "Tell my story." And I immediately began to think and dream and pray about writing some kind of book that would indeed tell her story. I wanted it to be, of course, historically accurate, so there was an immense amount of study that went into the book, research of that time period, of other contemporaries of her life. All of her writings I read again and began to put together a story about Julian of Norwich. It's taken me 25 years to fulfill my promise to her in response to that dream. But I now at last have published this book called Juliana. Now I know in your image it's in reverse imaging, kind of a mirror-like image. But you can see that it's an incredibly attractive cover. I'm so delighted with the book. This is the hardback book that has the book cover, the jacket cover, that includes a little information about the author. And then, of course, I have the paperback. So here now, finally, 25 plus years later, I have fulfilled my promise to her in writing of her story. I want to make this book available to you if you're interested. I don't think everyone is going to be interested. Not everyone enjoys historical fiction like this is. Some people prefer nonfiction, just straight history, straight biography, but I wanted her to become so real to people that I felt like I needed to use a little creative imagination and do the best I could to faithfully reproduce her character, her calling, her experience with God, and her incredible wisdom and love as a spiritual director. She was an anchoress or an anchorite. That is, she was a woman who withdrew from society and spent her time giving spiritual direction to souls who had passed by. This also tells the story of a young woman by the name of Marjorie Kemp. And Marjorie Kemp is a historical person. And she too wrote an early English autobiography, the first in the English language. And she actually had the opportunity to be counseled by this wise woman, Julian of Norwich. And so Marjorie, or Maggie, as I call her in the book, has her own story to tell, and I weave the two lives together in an incredible relationship and friendship where Juliana, as Julian of Norwich insists she be called by Maggie, Juliana becomes the spiritual mother and guide of this woman, young woman who had been horribly abused by her father and finds refuge in the arms of the church and redemption through the love and the wisdom of Juliana. Now, if that sort of thing sounds appealing to you, if you are a woman who has been through some of those kinds of difficulties where in your life there's been abuse and there's been molestation even by perhaps even family members, and I think this is a book that would be powerful for you, and you would find freedom and wisdom and hope and redemption in the words and the life and the counsel that Juliana gives to Maggie. And if you're a person that's in the counseling realm, that's your calling, spiritual direction, spiritual formation, you would find this book helpful in imitating the counseling, the wisdom, the love given by Juliana, this incredible woman of God, a wise woman that really truly was ahead of her times. So if you're interested, if you would like to have a copy of this book, either the paperback book or the hardback book, both are available. Of course, there is a price difference. You pay a little bit more for the hardback. The hardback sells for $22. That's really a discounted rate that I'm giving to you. And the softcover or the paperback copy sells for $12. So paperback for $12, hardback
Dang internet.
for $22. And what I'd ask you to do is just to private message me on Facebook and let me know that you are interested. And I'll certainly get the book to you. You won't have to worry about postage. I'll take care of that. We'll make arrangements. We'll have conversation. I'll get your address if you don't live locally, and I'll get these books to you. I think God will speak to your heart. I truly believe this book is anointed. And in the 25 plus years that it took me to write it, I felt many, many times the presence of the Holy Spirit. And if I may say it, the presence of Julian of Norwich herself as she guided and directed and inspired originally the concept of this book. So that's my announcement for tonight, and I'm going to be posting this video on my own personal Facebook page and probably the Headley Church page. So you'll be seeing this. Just private message me if you're interested in the book at all. God bless you. It's a beautiful day here in Amarillo, Texas. Beautiful morning at Headley this morning when we worship the Lord together at Headley Methodist Church. Love to hear from you. Let me hear from you soon. God bless you.